You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today. And today we have another show lined up for you guys. We have the CEO and founder of an amazing company, Terawatt. Her name is Francie Jain. She is going to teach us all about what's going on at Terawatt Group Coaching, a company that is on a mission to help businesses not just survive turnover, but to stop it in its tracks. When it comes to a decade of experience empowering leaders through expert coaching, Francie is here to pull back the curtain on what turnover is. We're going to be talking about more than pizza parties and ping pong tables on Fridays. We're going to talk about something that's a little bit more concrete. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you for our guests, your time today. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here. It's awesome.
I know you've been able to break down the hidden cost of turnover and how to fix it. Spoiler for this show is that you've been able to fix it and you have a lot of clients to prove that. My first question for you will be, what kind of prompted you to say, you know what, this is something that we can actually discover with these companies?
Well, it's funny because initially when I got into this, I was really just trying to come up with a solution to help individuals have better access to experts and help them at crossroads. And I actually, before I did this, I worked in finance. And so a lot of my time was spent with, reading the research and reading books and just really understanding, coaching, professional development, all kinds of things that companies could do and like what the impact was. Cause I was always looking for like the tangible outcome, like what did the research show? And as I was doing that, I was always so shocked by the wonderful things that happened. It wasn't sort of like, yeah, you do professional development and maybe these good things will happen. It was like always these wild things like, the higher the professional development budget, the higher the revenue, or you know what I mean? Like the more the professional development budget, the lower the burnout. And it just kept like all these wonderful things were happening. And so I just kept getting more and more excited. And so then as I sort of developed this company and figured out that it was really like a marketplace and that was really the best way for me to help people, it just became a really nice way for me to help people understand the why, like why you would want to do group coaching. Because a lot of people get why individual one-on-one coaching, because it's very easy for them to say, like, what does that bring to me? Like, I know that I can be better. And it's funny because it's really the same thing. Like a group of people can be better. And it can be a great solution. I think it's oftentimes a better solution than sending people to conferences, right? For instance, right? Like with that same budget, they can get access to incredible, experts and then practice over several months. And so I'm always just trying to find things that have like a real quantifiable proof point. And so that's when I found that here, I just got so excited and I sort of spend a lot of time talking about that. Because the why is important and the why for me is super important for everyone, right? Everyone thinks like, why is this going to help me?
And speaking of that why, a lot of times when companies are just focused on growth and maintaining culture and stay on mission, things can get kind of tricky. You have research and case studies that show that a 500-person company can lose over $4 million annually due to turnover. So based on your research, what do you believe exactly that money is end up going to?
Yeah, so, okay, that's a really great point. So one of the key things just with organizations is for them to understand what voluntary employee turnover costs them. So that's when somebody quits of their own volition, they're not fired. What are the direct costs and what are the indirect costs at an organization level? So a lot of times when people quit, there's like a tendency to see that as very specific to that person and not as a systematic issue. But if you look back and you look at your voluntary employee turnover over the past 5 years, say? Is it all pretty much similar? And if it is, there's probably something, programmatic or organization-wide that's going on that leads to that kind of turnover. And so once you're able then to really understand what your organization's annual kind of turnover rate is, then you can relate it to your vertical. Like, for instance, like if you work in tech, I think the voluntary employee turnover in tech is like 15%. In hospitals, it's about 20%. It's something really crazy in like retail food, like McDonald's, it's like 70%. But I think that's because it's a lot of students. But I mean, there are all ways to explain these things. But the point is, there are still always outliers. So even though the average is a certain number, there are organizations that are way below that. And so we have a case study from one of our coaches who developed a system that helps organizations bring psychological safety into their organization. And the reason we care about that is there's this incredible study done in 2015 by Google showing that the most effective teams all showed a very high level of psychological safety. And so the question is, like, doesn't everyone then want to bring psychological safety to their organization? Because now we know that the best teams perform when people feel safe and they feel like they can bring up problems or counter arguments. And it makes a lot of sense because it's that kind of perspective prevents the groupthink. So, back to this coach. So he came up with this. He has this intellectual property IP, we call it, right? It's content. He brought it to a hospital that has 24% had 24% voluntary employee turnover, and they were able to get the employee turnover down to 4% over 9 years. So every year the employee turnover rate went down 1 or 2%. And then what was really interesting is hospitals started winning awards for like the best metrics, like low medical error rate, high patient experience rate, things like that hospitals are really focused on a lot of metrics. And so that was great. And then what the CEO told the coach was that the difference between 24% employee turnover rate and 4% employee turnover rate was $32 million a year. And what's crazy about that is that, and part of that is because they had 4,500 employees. So that's a big organization, but a lot of that I think came from they were probably using travel nurses. And if you're not aware, travel nurses are a way to plug a hole in a hospital, and you're paying 1.5 or 2 times or maybe 3 times more than the full-time going rate of that role. But the idea is someone will come for 13 weeks and they'll be there 100%. And it's not, you're not kind of hiring a person. And so, so basically all these great things happened. They had an extra $32 million a year that they could decide what to do with. And I think that's the one thing that's just really important is we can look at these numbers all we want, but in terms of this percentages, right? But then you have to remember percentages are related to dollars and absolute dollars. And so the thing that I like to say about that is when you have an extra whatever amount of money, whether it's $500,000 a year, it's extra because you've reduced your employee turnover rate, or maybe it's $32 million a year, you can really be in offense, right? And you can decide how you want to spend that money, what are your values, what you want to encourage going forward. And it's a much better place to be than paying a lot of money to plug holes for necessary roles that have safety implications if they're open. And so it's just a really different experience, 24% unemployment, turnover to 4% turnover. It's just wildly different worlds.
I like the word you use, being on offense, because if you can, what does the opposite look like when they feel like they have to be on defense a lot more than offense?
Yeah, and what's funny too is I think that and then back to the research piece, there's a ton of research about the return on investment for human capital. This is not a secret or anything that only I know. It just somehow hasn't gotten out into the world. It's actually quite high. And so one of the other things I say to organizations is you should be looking at human capital as an investment the same way you would look at research and development, or the same way you would look at treasuries. Anything the CFO is looking at as like an option to invest in for the available cash, a human capital should be there, because, one of the top lines on the income statement is salaries. It's people. Most of what the organizations spend cash on is salaries. And so if you can get, you can work with people to have higher productivity, but also higher longevity and improved processes. I mean, a lot of the things, what happens when people stay longer and are happier is that they're more engaged. So they're saying to each other, oh, well, this is not working. Can we make this better? How can we do this? And guess what? Stuff like that means you're saving money. You're much more efficient with your time. All these things are happening. And so it's not just kind of like a few good things happen. Like it sets like a whole snowball effect down the mountain of like wonderful things start happening. And so that's kind of what I'm always trying to say to people. There's no downside to this. It's cash, but you can pretty much be sure it's going to be a relatively high ROI. So it's, just a question of like, how high do you need it to be? And maybe you have better investments, but this is a pretty darn good one.
Once again, let's refocus your radio and watching this online. Talking to our guest today, Francie Jain, CEO of Terawatt. Go to their website, terawatt.co. My next question I want to talk about is when you think about leadership and development, how they play in retention, what do you believe are some of the positives in emphasizing leadership development to keep people engaged? Actually, I'm going to take your word, people engaged.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because so I wrote a little thing with another coach, and we talked about kind of what would happen, like what's the 21st century version of high potential learning and development. And there used to be in 20th century, so GE and all these places almost put people through their own business schools. And so now we're saying, instead of like saying, you're the top 5%, we're saying like, anyone who would like to get involved, let's make you better, have it be more of an opt-in situation. And I think that, there's this incredibly valuable research from McKinsey that shows that of the most valuable companies in the world, I think it was like 1,000 companies in the world, the top companies had high level of professional development of their employees, as well as managed to metrics. And so what that means is like any in-person who's like a leader who is considered valuable for the organization, or even somebody who's at the very bottom who's maybe not considered valuable, it turns out that everyone really starts to thrive when professional development is kind of a part of their annual compensation. And then you can also get to other aspects, which is, there's also a statistic that a lot of people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. And so then you also have the component of like, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying like there's a difference between like managing and leading, and then you get into that component too, like, because really anytime when like someone's reporting to you, you could help them be their best self, or you can help them kind of get the job done. And I think that what I would rather be as an employee is someone who is feeling like I'm able to be my best self. I'm really understood about who I am. And either if I want to work on my weaknesses or I want to work on my strengths, or even have a person say to me, what's the career that you want? What does that look like? And helping you angle towards that. And certainly that's easier for larger organizations and smaller organizations. But I think the other thing that's really valuable, I think, for leaders is when you can say, listen, we want you to be the best you can be, and we'll just, let the chips fall where they may. You may not, every employee may not be here in 5 years, but as long as we treat them well and we're fair and we're able to keep them learning, then we'll have this incredible alumni base of people that think really positively about my organization, and will end up making it easier for recruiting and all these other things. So I think that, there's like a sort of a sense, or maybe it's an older sense, I'm not sure if it's still current, but like of trying to hold on to your employees and control them. And really no one can control anyone else. So the best we can really do is just make everyone as good as they want to be, and like let the chips fall where they may.
And when you look at companies and how they look at growth and how they look at data and how they look at where they are now versus where they were 5-10 years ago, you're able to, or your company, Terawatt, has been able to work with some biggest brands. And my next question would be, how has y'all's coaching been different from traditional corporate training programs?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, we're really different actually from most people who offer coaching. So just kind of from like a business model perspective, we are a marketplace like Airbnb. So just in terms of how we get paid, we add 15% on to what our coaches propose. So when we make a match, we take 15%. And that's below Airbnb. It's actually quite a low marketplace take rate in like all of marketplaces of the world. But we do that because we want to be aligned with our coaches and with our buyers. And so our buyers are typically employers. Usually the coaching companies that are more like on the affordable side or B2B, they offer subscriptions or they'll offer enterprise solutions, which is basically a subscription. And they basically pay the coach a certain rate. They charge another rate, and then the spread is what they make. It's called more like the descriptions of like a services business. And so because of that, we are not in the business of getting coaches to accept the lowest price. We are in the business of getting coaches to tell us what their market rate is and that they know they're bidding against other people. So, sometimes someone will not be busy, so they might bid a low rate, or someone might be very busy and they kind of have a high rate and they're like, make it worth my while. And we really let the coaches decide what their rate is and what's important to them and how they want to distinguish themselves. And so that's also a big thing, because ultimately, like what I've learned in my life is that, humans love to choose for themselves. And the more that you can let people choose and opt in, the better kind of the engagement and the better that everyone's just happier. You know what I mean? They just feel more content about where they are and less like troubled and annoyed and frustrated. And so I try to imbue that as much as I can in like our operations.
When you think about strategy and action, from every perspective, from a CEO to frontline employee to even the coach, there's different ways of looking at what's there in regards to the data and what their goals are. How do you see your coaches creating these strategies and actions for these companies as they get knee deep into the work?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So the coaches that we have, the thing that unites them is that typically they're full-time coaches and typically they're creating their own content. They might license someone else's content, but they work with a lot of different people. They work one-on-one, they work in groups in lots of different ways. And so one of the things that we do to help them better understand who they're working with is we do like a survey of the employees. So sometimes there can be a situation where someone buys coaching who's a good employer or a leader of a group of people. And so what we like to do is just make sure that the employees are kind of bought in to what they're getting. And so that's like a step we have where we want to be really clear that like the employees are interested in learning what the buyer is going to buy. And that helps the coach. Really everything we do is customized for the buyer. So let's say we have one coach who's an expert in public speaking and combines it with neuroscience. That person, right, would bid on anything that person bids on would have the lens of that background. And so that's how everyone sort of comes into it, is that they're able to like take their perspective and say, here's what I've seen and what's been successful with people in the past. And then the buyer just will see the whole package of different proposals that have been successful. And everything's going to be tailored to what that buyer is looking for.
Once again, you're watching us online on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Francie Jain, CEO of Terawatt. Go to their business website, terawatt.co. When you think about shifts that can be made, what I mean by that is just turning the page, if you will, but going with equipped knowledge and reflection of a new way to grow your business and maintain your employees, good employees that is going to help the organization grow and do the heavy lifting as it continues to mature them as they are getting better and bigger in their career. That was kind of long-winded, but as I land the plane on the question, my question is, when you think about shifts from an executive's perspective, what are some things they should keep in mind and looking at coaching as an investment rather than expense for them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of times when people are unsure if they want to do coaching, they're just not sure what the return is going to be. And they're not sure if it's a good use of cash. That's usually kind of what's going on. So if you're not solving like a super specific problem that like, I don't know, like everyone here needs to know how to write better. Like that's very specific, right? Like we don't really have coaches who do that. But, we're kind of good for like, there's a problem, you need a solution, and we can help you improve the return on investment for it. So one of the things we help organizations do is really like create control groups and create before and after surveys and really and do it over the same timeline so that it's really clear in terms of looking at the business, like what's changed and what hasn't changed and comparing and contrasting, because then that gives people almost like a baseline or a beta, a way to understand, like, if this is done this small group, how does that starting to change the organization? Has that changed that group? How is this group different from that group? That's what's really cool is when you start to do stuff like that. And like, did just this one group doing this one thing, did that change any of the metrics for that group? Did that change any of the metrics for the organization? And I think the more that you can really look at first you have to get like the baseline, which is kind of what we talked about before earlier, right? Like one of the baseline of what your employee turnover is, just period. And is that the same it's been for the past 5 years? So it's the same for these groups. Like, what are the metrics that they're coming up with that they're managing to? And does anything change when you bring in coaching? And does anything change for the broader organization? And that's all measurable. And then there's even really cool, super cool, like accounting metrics for human capital, for like the accountants of the world and CFOs of the world. I'm not an expert on those, but you can bring that to the finance, team as well. And they can put that in their reports. And you can start to look at it. It's basically kind of like return on investment type stuff, but it's looking at it through like GAAP and different accounting mechanisms. And so I think that and then when you're able to do it internally and you start to see the numbers and you see what shifts and change, then it's a little bit easier to become a believer. And that's kind of what we pitch is like, we're not saying to organizations, come in and let's do this all immediately with 5,000 people. It's more like, let's do a beta. Like we had a thing. Let's do a beta, see if it can be improved. And then if you like it, we can roll it out to a larger group.
When you look
or
at
even
the
just
future.
Another group, right? It doesn't have to be like a huge change. Can we make? Yeah.
When you look at the future of, speaking of working in groups, when you look at the future of the style of leadership and developing within the organization through coaching, what do you see might be something that is popular in the next 5-10 years?
I agree. I think that one of the really cool things that should happen, at least, I'm not sure if it will, but should happen, is that I think professional development should be a percentage of everyone's salary within an organization. And then they can choose how they want to spend it. I think, again, like the more choice you give people, the more engaged they'll be with the thing. And, even if they choose something like, how to do better with your family members, it will still impact their relationships with the work people, because, it's really a fallacy that like your work life and your home life are like super different. I mean, we're all the same person both places. It's just slightly different situations. But if you're able to help someone like better negotiate in one area, they'll definitely be a better negotiator in the other area. And same things with maybe a better listener, or maybe a better problem solver, or maybe a better communicator. And so, or maybe you just have fewer problems at home, so you're able to devote more energy to work. All sorts of like interesting things start to happen, right? So I just think the coolest thing for me would be is if it became a lot more mechanized about like the dollars that go into professional development, instead of it kind of being someone who's deciding who gets professional development, and sort of like picking, but becomes really like there's no what's the word, subjectivity to it. Everyone gets a certain amount, and that person can decide what to do with it. Like we've seen some surveys in the past that we put together, but that like different ethnic groups saw things differently at companies. It was fascinating. And I think what that really means to me is like, you have to wonder, like, are they organizations where there's like a picker of professional development and recipients of professional development? But if everyone's getting it, and if everyone's getting, let's say like 3% of their salary is a budget to spend on whatever you want for professional development, that's a way for it to really be fair across the organization, and it not be like, some people deemed, high potential or anything like that. Like really, like everyone has the potential. I think everyone has the potential to be an A+ employee. It's just that sometimes people don't exactly understand what's being requested of them, or maybe they have other problems they're sort of working with. But I think if you give everyone the tools, they can decide for themselves, like if they want to be an A+ player or, teammate.
And with that said, kind of ties into my next question. You hit on diversity moments ago, and not to get political, but when you think about what your company is doing to help businesses with these coaches and building bridges between them and these coaches, what are some of the things, just to dive deeper real fast, that you believe countries long-term can benefit from with working with these coaches and understanding that everyone's unique?
Well, because ultimately it's like everything. It's like diversity. It's like people. Everyone has different families. Like it's impossible to know what someone grew up with and what someone else grew up with, right? I mean, meaning like entrepreneurship was not really like a thing in my family, and so I didn't have a lot of support from my family to do entrepreneurial things. So I had to find that support from outside of the family. And it's the same thing for coaching. Like, if you want to switch careers, or if you have this big, bold idea, it can be really valuable to have a coach who can help you make a plan to get there, because they are trained in helping people plan for the future and do things that they want to do in their heart, instead of just sort of like playing the safe thing. And like this impacts everyone, right? Because everyone has different families, different cultures, whatever. And if you're not the average of the average of the average, and you want to do something different, like that's how coaches are super valuable and help you. And I think, like, I'm not a coach, and I've never been a coach, but I love being coached. And I used to have a therapist, and I love that experience where you're able to like learn from people they know how to make you better. And that's just an incredible tool, and like for everyone to just have more opportunities to like rise in whatever way you want, right? Like one person might say, you know what, I really wish I were a better writer. I want to write a book. And that's their like big goal in life. And like there are people that can help you do that. Someone else might say, it's really important for me to start a company. I want to figure out how to do that and make a plan. And everyone has different, goals. And that's kind of what coaching is like having a big, exciting idea that makes you excited about it, but also willing to work for it. And then having another person come in and say, okay, let's make a plan, instead of what could happen, right, is you could have a family member, or we don't have the money for that, or whatever the thing is, right? Like the crazy things that you hear from your family members. And that's why I just think that coaching is just such an unlock, because you really can be the best that you want to be, and like find a way. It doesn't have to be playing small ball, right? Like it's like the offense thing. Like play offense with your life.
Once again, been listening to Refocus Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Francie Jain, founder and CEO of Terawatt Group Coaching. Go to their website, terawatt.co. Before we let you go officially, my last question is, I kind of said earlier, is you all, through your company, have been able to work with some big brands, major players in the industry, across many industries. What do you believe has been a part of your success with how your company is ran?
It's a really good question. I think that, well, for one thing, I'm not actually the expert, right? I'm the matchmaker. So that's one thing that I really enjoy, because I like to sort of be the person who's the negotiator, the matchmaker, and I don't have to be a perfect expert in all the different ways to coach someone. But I know we've got over 100 people that are. And so what I think what we've done really well is just say, listen, like, we're not coming to you with like one solution. We want to know what the problem is and bring a solution for that. And I think that really makes, I don't know what the word is, but makes people feel like a little bit more relaxed, because we're not trying to sell them hard on some solution, and how can we help you in a very specific way, exactly what you're looking for. And like I said before, always this thought of like, well, what does it matter to me? Why does that matter to me? Like, what about me? What about my exact issues? And I think that we're able to really like target the exact personal or organizational issues that an organization or a person might have. And that seems to work pretty well.
Well, once again, go head over to the website, terawatt.co. Been talking to the CEO of Terawatt, Francie Jain. Want to say, like always, thank you for your time today.